Will you bring Watchtower Kingdom
arbitrary rules on how you dress?
and bring what else? Watchtower Kingdom.
Get back to work, we've killed for less. We will con the unwashed masses, dash their dreams in hopelessness.
Hey YouTube, it's your favorite apostate and non-dude 2, here once again with his co-host, the great and the terrible Aposta-cat, exposing Watchtower inconsistencies and freeing you from the prison of your very own mind. Now, what I would like to talk about in this video today is the closely held Watchtower stance against smoking. What inspired me to do that is this Awake article, or this Awake magazine here, March of 2011, page 26. Young people ask, what should I know about smoking? Now, for those of you who aren't in the know, Jehovah's Witnesses have taken a strong stance on the issue of smoking. It's been outlawed since before the year of 1950 for Jehovah's Witnesses to smoke. So just what I'm going to do is go very loosely go over this article and its contents and show you really how witness reasoning isn't very compelling against the habit of smoking. Tracy says this.
I wondered what it was like, so I took a cigarette from a girl at school and then sneaked out and I smoked it.
Bad girl, Tracy. Then paragraph number 5 says this, but before you light your first or your next cigarette, stop and think. Don't be like a fish striking at a baited hook. True, the fish may get a small reward, but what a price it pays. Instead, follow the Bible's advice and use your clear thinking faculties. Answer the following questions. Which I think is just absolutely hilarious that the Watchtower wants you to use your clear thinking faculties, since both you and I know how the Watchtower feels about independent thinking. Questions are this. We're going to focus on question A and question F. They want you to mark whether the statement is true or false. Statement A, smoking reduces stress. The answer to A, smoking reduces stress, is false. Although smoking temporarily relieves the stress of withdrawal symptoms, scientists have found that nicotine actually increases your level of stress hormones. The Watchtower is simply, very patently lying here, or at best cherry-picking the references. I'd like to read you an article from Discovery Health, which I read, and I will be providing a link to the article, and it is about nicotine and its effects on the human body. It says, medical researchers have begun to show interest in one of the most reviled components of cigarettes, nicotine. And they're interested in this potent, powerfully addictive substance for its health benefits.
Say it isn't so.
Over the past decade, new research has taught us more about how nicotine affects the brain and the body. Some of it is good news. For example, a lower incidence of Alzheimer's disease in smokers. Nicotine binds to nerve receptors and make nerve cells fire more frequently. In one study, a group of Alzheimer's patients were given nicotine patches while another received a placebo. Those with nicotine patches maintained their cognitive abilities longer and sometimes even recovered lost cognitive function. A follow-up study indicated that nicotine may also boost cognitive abilities in elderly people who aren't suffering from Alzheimer's but who are experiencing the typical mental decline associated with old age. Now, I don't believe that it mentions this in this particular Awake article, but if you type in the word tobacco in the Watchtower library, you'll find articles that say tobacco or nicotine clouds the thinking ability, and it also says that tobacco is linked with heart disease, which, by the way, in 2000 a study performed at Stanford revealed surprising results about nicotine's effect on blood vessels. Contrary to popular opinion or Watchtower opinion, the study showed that nicotine actually boosts the growth of new blood vessels. The discovery may lead to new treatments for diabetes. Many people with severe diabetes experience poor circulation, which can lead to gangrene and ultimately limb amputation. The next paragraph I'm going to quote directly conflicts with the Watchtower's claim that nicotine actually increases your level of stress. It's also very interesting that they don't cite any of the scientists who make this claim. Undisprovable statement, propaganda technique. In 2006, Duke scientists found that people with depression who were treated with nicotine patches reported a decrease in their depressive feelings. The results were perhaps not surprising for a drug associated with imparting a buzz. However, research also showed a direct link between nicotine and an increase in the release of dopamine and serotonin, two vital neurotransmitters. A lack of dopamine or serotonin is a common cause of depression. So, what do we learn by reading this paragraph? We find out that the Watchtower lied. Oh my goodness, really? How surprising, how shocking, scandalous even. Yes. The statement for F, it doesn't matter to God whether I smoke or not. In the answer section it says that is false. Those who want to please God must cleanse themselves of every defilement of flesh. There is no doubt that smoking defiles your body. If you choose to be unclean, harming yourself and others by using tobacco, you cannot be a friend of God. So, newsflash, Lucius V. Bo Diggity Man. According to the Watchtower, you are not a friend of God. Although I suspect you already knew that. Okay, and they cite that scripture there at 2 Corinthians 7 and verse 1. And that says you must cleanse yourself of every defilement of flesh. Ultimately, this becomes the entire basis for the witness argument against smoking. However, I would like to point out that if we're going to follow the supposed letter or the principle of this this scripture in 2 Corinthians, which would lead witnesses to not smoke, then it would also lead these same witnesses not to eat from fast food restaurants that fill their food with preservatives and high quantities of trans fat. Witnesses could not be allowed to become coal miners because coal miners can develop rock lung disease from the mining operations. Nobody could own or work in landscaping businesses because that would require working around chemicals that are toxic, dangerous, bad for your health, and are known carcinogens. Using cell phones will soon be off limits to the witnesses because scientists are currently studying the link between cell phones and brain cancer. For those of you in Rio Linda, brain cancer is a bad thing. You couldn't live in houses with asbestos because asbestos inhalation causes mesothelioma and lung cancer. You couldn't work on quick builds, this is my favorite part, or be a carpenter since the inhalation of sawdust is known to the state of California to cause cancer. Once again, cancer is bad for your health. So, if we're going to cleanse ourselves of every defilement of flesh, just like the supposed principle of 2 Corinthians states, then that would also pretty much prevent us from doing a myriad of things in modern day society because there are many things which are bad for your health. It's true, Paul did write that scripture there in 2 Corinthians, and I'm not arguing that smoking cigarettes is good for you. I'm just saying that there really is no biblical bearing on this, and it enters into the realm of conscience matter. I most certainly wouldn't begrudge somebody who decides not to smoke. I myself am not a smoker. But I also can't say that I would judge somebody who is smoking. On the note of judging, since Paul wrote that scripture in 2 Corinthians, he also has an interesting scripture in Romans 14 and then verses 2 through 4, and also verses 10 through 12. He says this, "One man has faith to eat everything, but the man who is weak eats vegetables. Let the one eating not look down on the one eating, and let the one eating not judge the one eating, for God has welcomed that one. Who are you to judge the house servant of another? To his own master he stands or falls. Indeed, he will be made to stand, for Jehovah can make him stand." And then verses 10 through 12 say this, "But why do you judge your brother? Or why do you also look down on your brother? For we shall all stand before the judgment seat of God. For it is written, 'As I live, says Jehovah, to me every knee will bend and every tongue will make open acknowledgement to God.' So then, each of us will render an account for himself to God." Do not be judging one another. That sounds pretty familiar. That's also a consistent message in the New Testament. Speaking of something in the New Testament, Jesus also has something very interesting. Some very interesting thoughts on this issue that we can use. He says this in Mark chapter 7 and verse 15. It says, "There is nothing from outside a man that passes into him that can defile him, but the things that issue forth out of a man are the things that defile a man. Now, for you Jehovah's Witnesses, I'll read that first part very slow so you get the meaning of it. There is nothing from outside a man that passes into him that can defile him. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses also make you aware of an interesting function of your Watchtower libraries. You'll note that if you see the verse numbers for the scriptures, those are in light blue, whereas the verse itself, the words, are in black. This is because those little verse numbers are links, and if you click the number, it will take you to, or it will reference every article in the Watchtower library that has ever used that scripture as a reference. Okay? Now, when I did research on this scripture, I discovered something very interesting. There isn't a single article in the Watchtower Library or any of its publications from 1950 onward that have used that scripture in Mark chapter 7 and verse 15, which is very curious, considering its very direct, very easily understandable, and very clear import of that scripture. So, you can take that as it stands. Returning to the article, we now see classic witness tactics, because when they can't back up their claims scripturally, they decide to engage in name-calling and slandering. Hooray for slander! So what will you do if someone offers you a cigarette? A simple but firm response such as a "no thanks, I don't smoke" will often work. If the person persists or even taunts you, you might say, "I have some important future plans that involve breathing." A little bit snarky and sarcastic there, don't you think? Bit unnecessary, Watchtower. Well, maybe not. You don't have a very high opinion of people who don't believe like you anyway, so it doesn't surprise me that you would encourage this in the minds of your younger believers. Heather, this little girl right here, she has this to say. If someone offered me a cigarette, I'd say no. If they tried to push me, I'd say, "Are you denying me my right to make a personal choice? That's pretty shocking in this day and age," which again I find hilarious that the Watchtower decides to invoke their right of freedom of choice and freedom of speech, considering that they deny these very same rights to members within their very own confines. Curious double standard we see there once again. It says, "Would I be willing to sell out my friendship with God for the price of a cigarette?" Well, considering the Bible doesn't have any direct bearing on this issue, it's not a concrete fact that you would be losing your standing with God if you decide to smoke. This is just a ridiculous insinuation by the Watchtower. And then the very last paragraph of this article says, "Don't allow tobacco executives to get their hands into your pockets. Why take that bait? Neither that group nor your peers who smoke have your best interests at heart." Amazing. The Watchtower knows the interests of your peers. Man. Really, why? The people up at Bethel, they really are wizards of smart, aren't they? "Rather than listen to them, listen to the advice found in the Bible and learn to benefit yourself." I can agree. Listen to the advice found in the Bible, learn to benefit yourself. And as you read the Bible, you will undoubtedly be led to the conclusion that what it teaches is completely and utterly contrary to what the Watchtower would have you to believe, because the Watchtower wants you to believe and follow men and not the words of the Bible, because they could clearly and consistently misapply the scriptures to create a divide between you and everybody else, which increases their hold on your thinking and reasoning abilities and thus their control over you. That really comes back to what I always have to say at the end of my videos, and it's very true. When you are fully freed from the controls of everybody, then you are free. You're free to do what you like, be who you please. And if you have a bad mental attitude, then life around you will seem all that much worse, which is why I say life is a state of mind.